I'm Steve Mann, and welcome to You Can Make a Difference. I grew up on a small potato farm in Idaho, where I quickly learned the value of hard work and developed a desire to see and experience the world beyond the fence line. That curiosity shaped my life. Over the years, I've founded or co-founded 4 successful businesses and 4 humanitarian foundations. I've worked with U.S. presidents, built leadership programs, and moved my family across the world to fight HIV/AIDS in Africa, all by being a husband to my amazing wife and raising a beautiful, multiracial family. I've traveled to more than 50 countries, met countless people, and learned from many cultures. Along the way, like you, I've developed beliefs, principles, and values that matter deeply to me, which I want to pass on to my children, grandchildren, and beyond. That's what this channel is about. You Can Make a Difference explores how we pass on wisdom, not just information, by sharing our stories and life experiences. Today's younger generation doesn't need more data. They need context, perspective, and meaning. Stories help us humanize life, start meaningful conversations, and give the next generation the confidence and clarity they need to navigate a fast-changing world. I'm glad you're here. Okay, today we are going to be discussing dreaming or imagining, however you want to phrase it. And our guest today is Kim Henderson. And Kim has a background in broadcasting and in publishing and a large background in working with youth. And so, Kim, if you wouldn't mind just telling a little bit about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, that's hard to know where to begin. Don't know which aspect I would cover the most. I guess I've always enjoyed publishing, writing. And to me, it's very important to capture histories, to capture those that have lived before and learn from their example, learn the things that they would have taught us if they had taken the time to write it down, or had they had the modern inventions that we can enjoy now, where they could have recorded their voices or whatever. To me, a lot of that was unfortunately lost or could be lost if we don't take the time to capture it. So my publishing background, I think, helped me accomplish that. And on the side, that's something I've always leaned toward doing. And now that I'm retired, that's something that I've taken a more full-time venture at.
Okay, so your love and your avocation right now is writing. In fact, could you just show us your book?
Sure.
You just finished the book. And tell us a little bit of what it is and why you wrote it.
I did. My book is called Ross Park. Ross Park is it's a park in Pocatello, Idaho. It's the place where my family went, my father and uncles and grandpa and grandma, whenever they could get together. That's where they assembled. The book is a story. You won't be able to see it on the back, but there's my father and 4 of my uncles. All of them went to World War II. And to me, can't find another way to say it, would it be sinful if their stories were not captured and preserved. And so what I wanted to do was capture not just one individual story, my father's or one of the uncles. I wanted to capture the entire story and wind it together as things were happening at home as well. So getting counsel and advice from grandpa, getting my humorous letters from my grandmother, just the way that they kept the family going during what I envision as one of the Earth's most difficult times. Yeah. And so the book had to be done in a historical novel kind of approach because I didn't have all of the details surrounding the events that took place. I don't know if it helps to give you like an example. I knew in the case of my one uncle, he was drafted number 6 in the first draft that they held. So he knew he was on his way. His twin brother decided that he would I might as well go along and get this 1 year of service, he thought, over with. And so he tells his fiancée that, I think I'm gonna go enlist with my brother. And so the truth that we know is that she said, um, "Well, then I guess we're through." And she threw her engagement ring at him. Okay, so that's a true story, but I don't know where it took place. So using the approach of an historical novel, I can create, it took place in Brown's ice cream parlor, and it was after a movie and that kind of thing.
So you could fill in a few of the details.
Correct, correct.
Now, what do you hope this book will do, not only for your grandchildren, but great-great-grandchildren who you will never know?
It's interesting that you would ask that question because the title of my book was going to be, My Dear Children, Wherever You Are. Grandpa started his letters initially with My Dear Children, and then as each of the kids got drafted or taken, now he doesn't know where they are with censorship and that kind of thing. He knows approximately where they are, but not exactly. So the salutation in his letter changed from My Dear Children to My Dear Children, Wherever You Are. And so the vision in my mind became writing a book where my grandpa could, not only could we tell the story and preserve the miracles and the things that happened during the war, but where my grandpa had voice to his posterity. So the letter concludes, the book concludes with a letter from grandpa to his unknown posterity. And so
Wow.
hoping for inspiration from what he did write, from what I do know about him, and then just seeking for inspiration as I write, to capture what I think he would tell that posterity.
You know, I'm gonna divert from our direction here a
Okay?
little bit because I find this so fascinating. You're writing this book, so grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren who your grandfather won't ever know, and you
Yep.
may never know,
Right.
that they can feel a part of something, a part of history,
Mhm.
and that they can hear these words from those parents telling them. Why do you think that's so important for today's generation? And I ask you that question because you've spent a lot of time with today's generation and you see some of the issues they deal with.
For
How can stories like that help?
Well, the trials that these young people have are obviously not the same. But in my mind, if they can learn from the example of these ancestors who went through a much different, but I think one of the world's most challenging times, I think if they can translate what they observe in their behavior and how they responded to their challenges, I think they can apply those um, lessons, those moral learnings, if you will, to the problems that they face. They're not going to face D-Day. They'll learn in history books maybe what that was. But just the same, the onslaught that they experience is in many ways, I think, more dangerous and
D-Day.
widespread than D-Day. I mean, just like you suggested in your question, I can't even imagine the challenges that they face. I just cannot imagine the pressure that they feel with the things that are happening in this world,
Yeah.
you know?
You know, I have a great-great-grandfather who uh, was a kind of abandoned son in England, living with his uncle who was teaching him to be a baker.
Oh, yeah.
And he joined the church, which his uncle hated. He got a girlfriend who was a member of the church who his uncle hated anything to do with it. And he was still a very young man, escaped out of the apartment that his uncle had him in, down a ladder, off, picked up the girlfriend, went to catch a boat of other saints who were headed for the promised land across the ocean. And I know that much about his story. That's it.
Right.
I would love to know, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? What was it like when you got to New York the first time?
Right.
How did you deal with the finances? What were you afraid of? I wish I had more of that.
Oh, sure. How were you received? What did people do when you arrived?
Yeah.
You know, how did you face that challenge? There wasn't a place to exchange your money. I mean, how did you begin? It would
Yeah.
be absolutely empowering to read how they fought through that.
Empowering, I think, is the word, because his life was very different than mine,
Hmm.
but the same kind of human issues going on and moralities and even though my life is very different, and I think that's today too. I grew up with a party line television, finally a black and white television when we got one, and
Yeah.
obviously no internet or any of that. And the my grandkids are growing up in an entirely different world,
Hmm.
but they're still human beings.
Hmm.
They still have a need for belonging and connection and trying to put perspective in it. And that's what you're trying to do, I think, with this book for your
It
great
is. You have. It's
grandkids.
a random thought that you give me, but there's one example in the book where my dad is calling home. He's calling home from back east near New York. He's in New Jersey, and I took the detail in the book to tell that he connects when he gets in the payphone, dropping his quarters in the slot, that he connects to New York, which connects to Chicago, which connects to Salt Lake, which then connects to Pocatello, which finally connects him to his home with a unique ring in that home because it's connected also to 5 or 6 other homes. And I wanted them to experience that detail for like you said, what was it like? What efforts did they have to go through to stay connected in that time? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
and again, it's different, but I think the appreciation of seeing how hard they worked to stay connected helps individuals now recognize that not falling victim to Satan's thing of isolation helps them stay connected with their families as well.
I was the little town I grew up in. The next town over was long distance phone call.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm trying to explain this to my grandchildren. They're going, "What's long distance?
That's right.
What are you talking
You
about?"
pick up your cell phone and you talk to wherever you want.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
why did you talk? Why didn't you just send them a text?
right.
Well, so a very different world,
It is.
and I agree with you. I think in many ways it's harder. It's tougher.
I
Uh,
firmly believe I truly believe that.
it's tougher to come, in a way during World War II, you were forced into an identity.
Mhm.
I am a soldier. I am fighting for my country. I am doing this. And I think today there's a lot of, I don't know who I am. I don't
Mhm.
know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. I have
Mhm.
no purpose.
Mhm.
And boy, it's easy to fall into depression
Sure
when
is.
uh, when you feel no purpose.
Exactly. And that would have been Grandpa's big desire in his writing was to stay true to who they really were. He talked a lot about the word of wisdom, but in my understanding of what he was trying to say, it wasn't just the avoidance of drink, alcohol, smoking, that kind of thing. It was keeping their bodies pure, keeping their bodies untainted from what the world challenges were.
Yeah.
And with soldiers at the time, um, it was almost like anything goes, anything, whatever makes you happy. And yet,
We may die tomorrow, so do
yes,
whatever you want.
that eat, drink, and
Be
be
merry.
merry because tomorrow I might be killed in action. And so they lived that way. My uncle in one part of the book tells about just standing on the sidewalk and trying to pass time because he had to get back to the base. And he's approached by a young lady and she makes herself available to him. He talks about, but he knew better. He knew who he was. And so he didn't have any struggle with that temptation just because he knew who he was. And again, different trials today, but again, if a young person knows who they truly are, I think they resist
Yeah.
in the same manner.
You know, I'm going to segue
Okay.
now a little bit into the topic we were going to look at, but this is fabulous. I love the book. I want to read it.
I'll give you a
And
copy so you can.
I hope a lot of our listeners out there take this as, gee, what is there in my history, in my great-great-grandparents, as far as I know,
Mhm.
that ought to be recorded, that I ought to have some way to pass on their wisdom to my children and grandchildren.
Right.
So what a great example you've got there.
Well, thank you. It took a lot of time. I've had the desire to do this for a lot of years. I wrote their history, personal history, probably 20 years ago. But I always recognized that there was a part of their history that was missing. And it was like we just skipped over that. It was like
That's
a
the
couple of
stories.
paragraphs. The war, it was missing. So this book is to capture what was missing in there. And I hope, does exactly that for the posterity.
Great. And beyond just your posterity,
Mhm.
for a lot of people
Well,
around the world.
I didn't share this with you, and maybe it doesn't matter here, but I wrote it using a pen name. I'm Tobin Rhodes. I felt like I wanted it to reach deeper than just the Henderson family, if you will,
Yeah.
and all those that are Hendersons, um, the posterity of those aunts and uncles. So I wrote it hoping that others would benefit from it as well.
Terrific. Thank you so much for writing it and for sharing it with us. Well, the topic that we were going to and are going to talk about a little bit today is, I think, has a lot to do with the book. It's dreaming dreams.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite scriptures has been, for as long as I can remember, from Joel. And it's Joel 2:28, and it says, "And it shall come to pass afterward that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions." Now, to me, that's explaining a gift that we all have that we sometimes hide away or get squashed out of us, or we get told it was silly, and so we don't pursue our dreams. Now, in your working with young single adults and in counseling, what, I don't know if there's a percentage, but how many of them have dreams that they are actively pursuing? And if they don't, what does that do to them?
I don't know what percentage I would give to that, but I certainly understand your like of this scripture. And I agree with you that to dream a dream, to have a vision, I guess we can refer to the Proverbs scripture that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And I firmly believe that that's true in their own lives as well, not just pertaining to the gospel, but if they have a vision of what they would like to do and become and don't let it, as you said, be squashed, I think their future is bright. Um, I think it's hard um, because, like you say, I don't know what squashes the hope when somebody says that's a dumb idea, or when you get a grade that makes you feel like maybe this is not the right direction I should pursue. I mean, there's all kinds of ways in which we could be chased from a dream.
Yeah. You know, I used to run some leadership camps
Mhm.
for teenage young men.
Mhm.
And part of what we do is, after doing activities during the day, we'd, sit around and I'd have a couple of flip charts. And I would say, look, I'd like each of you to go up here and write down your dream. Well, they would. And what they wrote down was what they thought I wanted to hear, or what they thought their parents thought they should say. And so I say, okay, here's what you've given me. I want to know what you really dream about. So they'd go another round. It was a little better. I started getting some things. And then I would stop them and say, no, we're not quite there yet. Maybe your dream is riding a Harley Davidson stark naked across the Sahara Desert.
Right.
And they go, well, that woke them up. I say, you really want to know what I'm? And then they would start putting up the things
Mhm.
that were important to them, the things that they were imagining.
Mhm.
but didn't talk about anybody because they were afraid they'd be laughed at
Right.
or told that they couldn't do it or it was an impossibility, so they just hid it.
Mhm.
And with that kind of out in the air, we could start talking about dreams, which to me are so important. It's I think it's one of the great uniquenesses of human beings. No other creatures that we know of can really do that.
Right.
And yet, that's what our life is about. I have right here, you can almost see it, a pacemaker.
Oh, yeah.
And that keeps my heart going at a rate. Somebody had to dream that up. Somebody had to then create it. Somebody say, how can we going to put this in a human being? How are we going to make it work? How are we going to monitor it? What's it going to attach to? Somebody had to imagine all that.
Mhm.
And that's really true of most of the life we live today. Someone had to dream it up. Someone had to imagine it. I am so grateful for dreamers.
Right.
You know, when I was a kid, we knew of one galaxy,
Mhm.
this one.
Right.
The last I looked, they see something like 3 trillion galaxies
Galaxies, yep.
because somebody imagined the instruments and somebody goes through all this data and puts it in a format that we can understand.
Right.
But it all starts with somebody having a dream. And I think when kids don't have that dream, they go inward and they lose that ability to express themselves and do something beyond themselves.
Well, in response to your earlier question, not a completely good response, you asked for a percentage kind of thing, but I, for one, think that the current generation, if you will, I think they are dreamers. I think they are advanced thinkers. I think a good number of them have exactly what you're describing. They see life differently. They see and they hope to make a difference in life. Many of them, and I just have great hope for them. Um, I just have such faith in them. Working with them was um, a dream of an experience in the church for me. I tell people often, I probably shouldn't say it on air, but I would have cheated. I would have misfiled my records. I would have done whatever I could to stay there with them. They're just wonderful to work with, and I just totally believe in them.
You know, you bring up an interesting point. Um, because of what they have grown up with, they can imagine a world that I don't think we can.
No, I agree.
It's beyond our capacity. We're too
Mhm,
time bound. We're bound
mhm.
by the experiences we've had, and they're not bound by that. They're somewhere out here.
Right.
Um, but I think they're also often afraid to pursue that dream, or they don't know how, or they feel like they can't.
Mhm,
And my advice is always find a way.
mhm.
Just go a little ways. Do something.
Well, it's a silly example anyway, but I always tell my children, it's like if you're gonna run a marathon, but that thought is only in your own head, it's pretty safe that you're never gonna run it. But if you actually decide that you're serious about this, you're going to run a marathon, and you communicate that to some that you care for and love, chances are increased pretty significantly. And so, you know, when I retired, back to writing the book, and I don't want to divert the conversation, but I'll just use that as an example. Um, I had that principle in my mind. So as I left, what are you going to be doing? I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write an historical novel. I told as many people as I could because then it removed that barrier of I can't or I won't or I'm not committed. That's a commitment. And I think the same thing needs to happen with those dreams. Share that dream, let them know what it is. And maybe you'll get good advice and counsel from some that you speak to or share that with. But I think the biggest hurdle is actually making the jump.
You know, I've shared this story before, but it's worth repeating in this context. I had a terrific teacher in graduate school at BYU by the name of Gene G. Dalton. And and Gene had us write this report about ourselves. All kinds of stuff. It was pages and pages. We had to take all kinds of psychological tests and intelligence tests and all kinds of stuff. And what were our hopes, what were our dreams. And one of the things I wrote in there was, I'd like to climb Mount Everest. Well, he was fascinated by that. And so in a one-on-one, he says, well, do you do a lot of climbing?
Mm-hmm.
No, I've never climbed anything. So well, you must do a lot of outdoor stuff. No, I really don't. And he says, looked at me and he says, you know, Steve, most people who climb Mount Everest go outside and they hang around people who do. And I still think that is great advice.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a dream of something, do something.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to go climb Mount Everest the first day, but you can get in shape.
Right.
You can talk to somebody. You can read a book. You can get a little bit closer to it.
Right.
And, to share another story of mine, when I was little, I was really nearsighted. And they didn't find out that I couldn't see until the 6th grade. I would sit in the front row of my school and walk up to the blackboard and get in trouble because I couldn't read it.
Wow.
I didn't know there were mountains around me. Just saw blue.
Yeah.
And, but I could read, and I read voraciously. And one of the things I read back then was a story about Dr. Schweitzer and his medical mission to Africa. Well, I'm a potato farmer in Idaho, but I was fascinated by that. And, I kept a hold of that. Now, that doesn't mean I laid out this big plan. Here's how I'm going to go do that. I did not do that. But I think when you have a dream, you see opportunities that other people don't see.
Mm-hmm.
Or you may be willing to take risks that others don't take. And as you do that, it takes you a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. And eventually I was able to end up in Africa working on AIDS in Zimbabwe at the height of the AIDS pandemic. And but it all started with a little farm boy in Idaho reading about Dr. Schweitzer.
Wow.
And being fascinated and being willing, I think, to read more things and talk to people and look at opportunities. And I think that's really all it takes. That doesn't mean we're all going to climb Everest or we're all going to go to Africa.
No.
But we can pursue our dreams. And even if we don't get to Everest, we're going to learn a lot along the way. Or we don't get to Africa, we're going to learn a lot and we're going to contribute a lot along the way. But we got to keep those dreams alive.
For sure. That's a good example. I didn't know he had the spud farmer in common. I'm from southern Idaho as well.
Okay.
So
did you grow up on a potato farm too?
I wasn't on the farm, but we were called in to harvest the crop every year. We called it spud vacation. We got out of school for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Your story reminds me of an example in my own life. I served a mission in France, and I don't know what image to give you, but riding our 10-speed bikes, it's not like we see around here where they're in a mountain bike and they're upright. And, I mean, that was their national pastime. We were down low and we were racing everywhere we went. And wanting to learn about the people and learn about their heroes, not Americans are better, Americans are best, whatever. It taught me the art of respecting the bike rider, and I wanted to become one. And so I still ride to this day, and it's something that started way back on my mission. And I admired their big mountain was called L'Alpe d'Huez, and it's 21 switchbacks to the top. And that's where their heroes are born, a lot of them. And I made it my goal. It's like, I want to do that one day. But then, like you say, wow, how to do that? When to do that? How do you get there? How do you get a bike there? All the challenges that say, no, you can't do this. But in 2005, I rode L'Alpe d'Huez. And one of the great, I don't know what to call it, thrills of my life, to do that, to accomplish a goal that one I kind of kept quiet. Didn't venture it out there to too many people, but
But you kept the dream alive.
I did.
And you kept writing.
I did.
And you got closer and closer.
I learned I wasn't too good at riding the mountains. I was better at riding the flats. So I had to challenge myself by tackling the mountains. And we've got some beautiful mountains around here to tackle. So
And is Tour de France next?
that was one leg of the Tour de France. That's probably the best I'm going to do.
Well, we have another thing in common. I'm a bike rider too, and have been most of my life.
Oh, that's cool.
And I'm not going to do Tour de France, but I still try to do some long races. I do have an e-bike now that I do longer trips on.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because I'm 77.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're out 20 miles, it gets a little daunting going back uphill.
That's right.
Now, as important as these dreams are, and again, from your experience working with young people, how do we lose them and how do we get them back?
That's a good question. You lose them from their dreams or just lose them?
How do they lose their dreams?
I think it's what we talked about. It's the idea that it can't be done or there's other distractions. I have to concentrate on something else. It's impossible. It's, I don't know. I don't know how to do it. Can't put my arms around it. And like you were told, just get involved with those who climb, then you'll learn more about whether that's a realistic goal or not. I think it's encouragement mainly to make sure that they recognize that nothing, I think, is impossible. Anything they set their mind to, I believe they should be able to accomplish with encouragement and the right information, right preparation, that kind of thing. There's no reason they should be discouraged from it.
Let me ask you what could be an embarrassing question, but don't be embarrassed because I haven't done this either.
Okay.
Do you know your grandchildren's dreams?
A couple of instances, yes, but most, no.
Yeah, neither do I. I'm sitting here thinking, why not?
Yeah.
Now, I know some of them, like you.
Mm-hmm.
I said, but I ought to be a little more proactive about that. Mm-hmm. When I sit down telling a story, I'm going to tell them this story of dreams and say, okay, what's your dream? Well, and they might say, well, I don't have one. Oh, yes, they do. Mm-hmm. And, but I can't support them in their dreams if I don't know what it is. And I can't know what it is unless I ask them.
That's a good point. And I go back to a couple of conferences ago as President Nelson was talking and said that, at least I'm remembering, that was President Nelson that talked about grandparents having an increased role. I believe President Oaks talked about that as well.
That's right. His first address
had that included. That's what I was thinking of, I guess, because it really wakened me to the idea that you're talking about. I need to know more about what their thinking is, their vision, their dreams, their goals. Because if I'm going to do a better job at that role, that's something I need to know. I need to find a way to be able to reach out and touch base and stay in tune with them.
And being a grandparent is a role, isn't it? It's not just something that happened. It's something it is something that happened. We're grandparents because we end up being grandparents. But if we're going to be, we can choose to be involved grandparents. Mm-hmm. And I think even, we used to live in these big families all together. That's long since gone. Mm-hmm. Now families are spread all across the country.
Oh, wow.
And both parents work, and things are going a million miles an hour. But we also have some tools they didn't have back then. We have Zoom. Mm-hmm. We can get together, and I know families who do this they don't do it every week, but they do it monthly. Mm-hmm. They have a Zoom with everybody on there, and they talk to each other to tell stories. I know another family who has a weekly newspaper they've had for like 20 years. And they all put into it. And if it doesn't come out, everybody's calling the grandfather who puts this thing out. Where is it? Where's our paper? And because they take their role as a grandparent seriously, And their view of this is, what can I do as a grandparent to help those grandchildren or great-grandchildren I'll never know?
Right.
Well, what I can do is kind of share my life.
Mm.
I can share what I've learned. I can share my wisdom. I can share my experiences. I can help them connect to me and to other generations and help them see their purpose.
Right.
And so I just think we sometimes overlook that calling.
I would agree. My wife and I actually talked about it this morning because we were contemplating that talk and how can we do better at this. And I don't think there's any one set way. I love the examples that you gave. I've done a family newsletter in the past, and just your talking about it reminds me, well, why is it in the past? Maybe I should be doing that again. I do have one example of one of my granddaughters, and I don't know what led me to it, but surprisingly, the inspiration I had was to write her through snail mail. And, she just laughed. She just thought that was so funny because it takes forever and you could do this, Grandpa, you could do this in email. And my tease with her was, well, when you write an email, you don't traditionally think about it. You don't put much thought to it. And besides, I want this to come to you when you don't know what's going to arrive. I want you to just be surprised by it. And so we're now into a couple, 3 months of that process. And I can tell you that she looks forward to receiving that each
Yeah.
week. And it's my way of that one person being able to stay in touch and to learn more about her, why she makes the decisions she makes, helping her learn from experience that maybe I've had to direct her in a couple of ways to make decisions that she might otherwise not make. So that's one I've done. But we were talking this morning, and
That's a great example, by the way.
well, it's kind of a silly one, but it's working, and it's not going to be for all of them. But we've got to find a way. What my mind goes to as you talk about this is my father-in-law, because I watched him go through the end of life where he was coherent, and so he communicate a lot, whereas my own father didn't have that advantage with dementia. But I watched his world shrink from family family to only those that he was concerned about, the ones that were lost, as you say. And his entire effort became those. My wife laughs at me because I've started to think that way. And I have to say to her, well, I don't have this thought that my life is ending soon. I guess we never know, but I am beginning to think that way. Those are the ones that are most concerning to me. Those are the ones that draw my attention.
Yeah.
Those are the ones where I want inspiration. I want revelation pertaining to what can I do? How can I help? But I can't ignore those that are doing well or in the path either, because their visions are equally important, as you've pointed out. So I love your thoughts. I love your discussion. That's good for any grandparent to hear or think about.
You know what? I think there are two sides to this story. We kind of aim this broadcast at grandparents,
Hmm.
saying, look, you have a role to play, and it's an important role. And for some, I think it gives them some purpose that they haven't thought of. Oh, maybe I could do that. Maybe I do have something I could pass on.
Hmm.
Maybe I do have some stories I could share. But the other part of that is those great grandkids
Hmm.
who may be struggling with all kinds of issues. And maybe somewhere along the line, they find that book, or they find something their great grandfather wrote, or my great grandfather coming from England. And they say, I'm part of that. Their life isn't like mine, but they have the same kinds of issues. Maybe I can do it too.
You know, your thought is really interesting. I've talked about grandparents, parents, and grandparents, and where I struggle a little more is okay. Well, is my story compelling enough to be of assistance or help? And so I haven't captured as much of that, but I do find the opportunity when I'm communicating with them to share stories, share experiences that come along through life. You have a grandson who um, doesn't do as well on the basketball team as he thought he would. Well, thought he should or deserved. Well, man, I can talk about that. I can tell firsthand experiences of that disappointment. I can tell you what happened in my life and what I did as a result and how it came out in the end, how it worked out. And it wasn't all lost as I thought it was at the time. So verbally, I think I'm doing a better job of that when I see the experience when it happens. But probably there's much more to the stories that you're talking about that could be done on my part.
Well, I think on all our parts. You know, a few years ago, at my wife's insistence, after years and years and years, I wrote a personal history. About 100 pages, goes through things. Boring as all get out. And part of what led me to writing my book was they don't really care about all that data. He was here then and here then, and we did this. They want the stories
Mhm,
because that's what gives it life,
mhm.
gives it humanity. It enables them to connect to it.
The harder ones, though, you can help me with this one because um, faith fulfilling story, that's easy to tell. But those times when life was really rugged and tough, that's harder to tell. That's harder to, and when you talked about writing your own personal history, have you ever read a personal history that had all these problems in it? Doesn't seem like that. I mean, you read about life was hard on the farm or whatever, but you don't get the nitty gritty stuff that happened along the way. And I think in everyone's life there is that stuff that no one talks about. And I don't know. I've got to figure that one out myself because there's so much you can learn from it.
There is, and sometimes more than the good news.
Hmm.
I'm working on an episode right now on integrity.
Okay.
And one of the stories I'm thinking about is when I was in junior high and wrote a book report. But what I did is got a book from the library and read the brief notes and wrote that up. And the teacher said, no, 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 and talked to my parents. And of course, I absolutely denied it.
Right.
And they let me go. They knew I was lying,
Hmm.
but they decided for whatever reason to let it go. That has haunted me for 65 years.
Hmm.
And I think maybe forced me to have better integrity because I hated that,
Hmm.
what I felt like when that happened. Well, that's a pretty crummy story that I haven't shared with any of them.
Hmm.
But I suspect they all have issues like that.
Hmm.
And they can learn as much or more from grandpa saying what he did and how he failed in that than all the good news stories.
Oh, I would totally agree.
But you're right. We don't like to do that. We
No,
don't.
it's hard. It's really hard to do. And I'm thinking of one here now and just, do I even want to go there? But it's like being through a bad business deal and being in a hard situation, moving to this town when we did and not having the wherewithal to really get where we wanted to be, facing an apartment, all that good stuff. Uh, I was just devastated. I can't do this. I can't. I prayed like crazy, and it's the strangest circumstance that I could possibly write. And I think adults, if I wrote down the reality of what happened, they would say, "You did what?" You know, they wouldn't believe the things that we did to get into a home. And I felt guided at the time, but now I look back on it, it was miraculous. But to tell the story.
Didn't look miraculous at the time.
Heavens no. I was desperate. My wife cried and cried and cried, and, but there is a lesson that comes out of that, and so somewhere, I shared it, as a matter of fact, verbally with one of my sons, probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he looked at me like, "What? Are you kidding me? How come we don't know that?"
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, because I'm not proud of that part of the story.
Yeah. And yet, that's probably exactly the story that maybe a great-great-grandchild will be reading 20 years from now when
Mhm.
they're struggling or they're depressed or they're about to give up and they go, "Geez, my great-grandfather had the same kind of thing."
Mhm.
And it was not a big win. It was a awful thing. And that's how I feel. But he made it through. And maybe that's just a story that can give that great grandchild the hope that he needs.
Well, the whole purpose of your, conversation here has really triggered my brain because, I'm trying myself to figure out, okay, what can I do? Um, even this first time of experience of speaking into a microphone, it's like, well, maybe I can record that story. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not a written part of a family, my history, my personal history, but maybe I can record that. I don't know. I'm working through that in my brain because I do believe what you're telling us here, and that is those are faith promoting stories and probably shouldn't just be buried because they were hard to go through.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So I appreciate what you're driving at in this particular conversation.
Well, thank you. And it's just been great having you on the show. I hope we can get together another time,
I would enjoy
maybe
that.
another topic. I would like to ask you one question that I tried to ask all my guests.
Okay.
And the title of the show is You Can Make a Difference. And so I try to ask all my guests that what is it that you are trying to do? Could be today, this week, this month, this year. What is the thing that you are really trying to work on right now to make a difference?
That's a good question. There is a lot of what I feel is directed towards family, no question. But I do feel a real desire to do something that makes a difference with people in general. I've had a thought, a vision, a dream, dare I say, for a lot of
Why
years.
not?
and and your discussion has really spun around in my head. You wouldn't know that you've caused this in me, but I might as well. Can I share my dream?
Sure.
I was It was in the YSA experience. A young man came wearing one day, he had a badge, a big yellow badge on him, and it said Bionic on it. And I thought, well, that's strange. What's Bionic? And pressed a little further and talked to him. He's still a hero in my mind for the life he's lived. But Bionic stands for, believe it or not, it's Christmas. Okay? So my vision has been I'd like to create a coin that has Bionic on it. And on the back has probably a picture of the Savior. And I don't know if it says pass it on or whatever. But the idea is that you could use this coin standing in a grocery line and you observe in front of you that someone has obvious a little bit of difficulty with this grocery tab or whatever, and you're in good shape. You can do this. Why not? Most of what we're taught is to do things in secret, and I understand that. And most of what we do probably needs to be. But I don't see anything wrong with either stepping up and saying to the cashier, "Do you mind if I take care of this?" And then just handing this coin to this good person and let them learn that it's Christmas all year long and that the Savior's admonition to take care of one another is not just a seasonal greeting. And I've wanted to find a way to launch that, produce that, come up with that. So maybe a future conversation, I'll tell you how I did it since you've spurred me on.
And what would they say in Star Trek? Make it so.
Make it so. Yep. I just need to stop creating roadblocks and figure the way to do it.
That is just, thank you so much for sharing that. I want a coin.
Okay.
I want a coin so I can pass it on. You know, just last week, my wife was standing in the grocery line. She was fine for money to pay for things, but I think she looked a little frazzled. And she got there, and a person several ways behind had paid for it.
Oh, wow.
She was astounded.
Yeah.
She said, but I don't need it. She said, no, just pass it on to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, you people thinking, you think of 1,000 ways you could do it. Some of it would be very quiet. It doesn't have to be all observed, but just letting people know that Christmas lives all year round.
Great.
So
thank you so much for being with us.
I enjoyed it very much. I thank you for your dialogue, for sparking so many things in my brain, making me want to do better at these things as a grandparent myself.
My pleasure. In our next episodes, we'll explore other attributes that have shaped our lives and how storytelling can make a real difference in the lives of others. We'll also be inviting guests from all walks of life to share their attributes and stories and how they've tried to pass them on to a younger generation. If you'd like to learn more about me or my book, Stories That Shape Us, visit steve-mann.com, where you can download a free bonus chapter on discussing controversial issues with family and friends, something most of us tend to avoid. You can also share your own stories or attributes you'd like to see us cover here on the channel. Join us next time as we continue exploring how the stories from your life can become a gift of experience for others. And if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe and invite someone you care about to join you. Also, please send us a note on how you are sharing your wisdom with your children and grandchildren. Remember, you can make a difference.